How you guys doing tonight? Welcome in here to Rover Sports, and I wanted to talk to y'all tonight as I put on my headphones in my mercurial way. I like kind of having them strung to the back of my head. I don't like them over the top of my head. It's kind of a weird thing that I got going for me. And, of course, this string will inhibit the view slightly of myself in this video. So, because of the amount of time on this laptop, I'll probably make this about 7 or 8 minutes of content tonight. As I sound like a mouse. Voice isn't deep enough. All of the criticisms, right? All of the criticisms of Rover Sports to the forefront, right? But anyway, I'm going to continue with this video. Patrick Shurmur, a.k.a. Stale Pat Shurmur. Pat Shurmur. Sherm Dog. Whatever you want to call him. The Sherm. The Sherminator. He is 17-49 as a head coach. He's a 54-year-old guy. He's not getting better at his job. As a head coach, the great coaches in this league have input on defense. If your defense sucks, you are still responsible for that. Sean McVay collaborates with Les Snead and says, I'm a first-year coach. I want to get a guy that's a stud, that was a winning defensive coordinator with the Denver Broncos. I want to bring in Wade Phillips. Bada bing. Wade Phillips is spectacular. And Sean McVay, and that problem is absolutely solved, right? You guys get that. Let's talk about Kyle Shanahan. He has Robert Saleh, but he has a specific defense. He collaborates with the general manager, so the DeAndre Baker pick is completely and totally within the bounds of Pat Shurmur. It's completely under his responsibilities. Everything is under his umbrella. I've heard this argument before. Even my good buddy Dave, who hosts this podcast with me on Rover Sports, has this argument, and it is valid. He says, what do you expect of James Bettcher and Pat Shurmur when the talent is so terrible? I don't think the talent, first of all, is that completely terrible. The New York Giants went out there in the draft. Last year, they draft Sam Beal. He's done nothing but get injured, so I can't blame Gettlemen. I can't blame the coaching staff. Corey Ballentine has been healthy this year. Corey Ballentine should maybe be on the field. Julian Love was considered a steal in the 4th round by every draft expert. Why not put him instead of Grant Haley on the field? Why can't you describe the defense? And then DeAndre Baker. DeAndre Baker at Georgia. I watched a ton of Georgia games. Georgia's one of the elite teams in the NFL. He shut down Deebo Samuel. He even went up against Darius Slayton when he was at Auburn. He didn't allow a touchdown in about a year and a half. He's a long cornerback. He's 6 feet, but he plays bigger than that. He's physical. He's a man-to-man corner. And he's a damn good cornerback, and the Giants selected him appropriately. He was going to go early in the 2nd round anyway. So you have DeAndre Baker. You're paying a guy in Janoris Jenkins that is still a pretty good cornerback in this NFL. You then have Antoine Bethea, who has played in the scheme for a long time. You have Jabril Peppers, who utilized correctly is a talented player. You have Alec Ogletree, who's played football before, Lorenzo Carter, and then this defensive line, you have Dexter Lawrence, Marcus Golden, who's given you actually a lot. He's probably the only bright spot on this defense. Marcus Golden And B.J. Hill has regressed. I don't know why. He was really good in his first year. He's not getting on the field or something. But Tomlinson's looked good, and Dexter Lawrence. So this run defense, it's just the linebackers. It's Ryan Connolly not being there. And then it comes down to Bethea and Peppers just taking poor angles. And even DeAndre Baker said he doesn't know what the F he's doing out there on the field. He says he has no idea. He said that after the Monday night game. The Giants' red zone offense is abysmal. They come out flat every single week. Every single week, they're in a 7-0 hole or 14-0. Patriots, they're down. Cardinals, they're down. Detroit Lions, they're losing the game. 14-0. Every single week they step out there on the field, first quarter, they're not ready to play, and that's like we're going to have a players-only meeting or whatever. Here's the point, okay? The Miami Dolphins, the only team that doesn't play really hard or can't compete is the Cincinnati Bengals. And the Bengals, their schedule isn't even that easy. They play Pittsburgh, they play Baltimore, and when they've had, close games, like they went up to Seattle in the beginning of the year and almost won, and against the Rams, they're within striking distance, whatever. But look at the Dolphins. They go out, they beat the Colts. They go up to Pittsburgh, they're up 14-0. They're playing good halves of football. The Jets suck. They're absolutely awful. They sucked against Jacksonville. Sam Darnold's been a train wreck all year long. Adam Gase is the worst coach in the NFL. He's like Rich Kotite. And you spot them a 14-0 lead. Your defense, James Betcher and Shurmur's defense, can't get off the field. And there's no excuse for talent. There's no excuse for talent when you're playing a team in the New York Jets that is quitting on their head coach. When you're playing guys in the secondary that don't belong in the NFL, that couldn't tackle Golden Tate to save their lives, that made Darius Slayton look like a freaking DeAndre Hopkins, he made him look like Jerry Rice out there. The Jets are abysmal and terrible, and their offensive line is missing everybody. They have no good offensive linemen at all. And the Giants did get some pressure on Sam Darnold, but still, Darnold and Jamison Crowder, they still tore apart the Giants. And then the Giants, they can't block. And this leads me to Hal Hunter and this team. I mean, you can... I seriously don't blame Dave Gettleman for why the Giants suck. I just think that the coaching is so terrible. I think this defense should be middle of the road in the NFL. I mean, when I listed DeAndre Baker, when I listed Jabril Peppers, when I listed Lorenzo Carter, I listed Marcus Golden, and then in the middle you have Dexter Lawrence, you have Tomlinson, you have B.J. Hill, and now you add a Leonard Williams. Your D-line should be really good. Those are name brand players. Name brand players up there on the defensive line. And you could say every player that Dave Gettleman drafts completely sucks, and it's his entire fault. But this is my school of it. James Betcher is in no way, shape, or form prepared to be a good defensive coordinator in this league. He wasn't good last year whatsoever. Colts game, they blew that game. Against the Tennessee Titans, they couldn't stop the damn run. Against the Cowboys, when the Cowboys were playing their second stringers, they allowed Dak Prescott to put up 35 points. This defense has never played well. Alvin Kamara ran all over them. Cam Newton and the Panthers put up big numbers. Zach Ertz kills this defense. Even with Landon Collins there last year, he is not fit to be a defensive coordinator. So you can't judge DeAndre Baker. You can't judge guys like Jabril Peppers and these picks and Connolly and Ogletree completely yet until they have a defensive coordinator that can play to their strengths. And then you look at this offensive line. Nate Solder was a really good player for the Patriots. There's a reason he was the highest paid player. Kevin Zeitler's been solid his entire career. You have Pulley and Jalapeno. I know Mike Remmers might be older, okay? I know Mike Remmers is kind of a throwaway right tackle. That's where I can really get on Gettleman. But this offensive line, I mean, there's teams that are doing a lot with less. There's teams that are doing a lot more with less. You know, you have Sean McVay. You have up there in Packerland, somehow, they have a running game. Somehow with Matt LaFleur. You know, Derrick Henry and the Tennessee Titans offensive line. Every team has a better running game than Saquon Barkley in this running game. And I just believe that Shurmur sucks so bad as a coach that we're not seeing Dave Gettleman and these players win because of the coaching. And come on, the Lions are absolutely sucky. I mean, they went to the Bears, they lost. They're great at losing games. And the Giants went up there, got in a huge hole, give up big plays every single freaking game. I mean, you can't blame it all on talent. Eventually, you have to win an NFL game, and you can't be down 14-0. You can't always be trying to come back, taking your time in the huddle, not going no huddle at the end of these games, not showing any urgency. And then defensively, there's no adjustments being made by Shurmur, none at all. He should have fired James Bettcher. He doesn't fire up his team at all. There's no motivational speaking. There's no communicating with his teammates on the sideline. There's no even walking over to check in with Daniel Jones and Mike Shula in that offense. He doesn't do anything to communicate with his team. He's not analyzing this scheme of this defense, which this cover whatever that the Giants run, cover 2 is disaster. They should be running man-to-man. It should be a 4-3 defense. Leonard Williams should be on the field, maybe on the edge. You should have Dexter Lawrence on the field and Dalvin Tomlinson all on the field with Lorenzo Carter. Those 4 guys should be on the field. Tomlinson, Dexter Lawrence, Leonard Williams, and you need that. You need that. I'm telling you, you need a 4-3 defense. That's what always works. That's what Spagnuolo had with Justin Tuck and Umenyiora and Strahan. It's what Perry Fuel had when he was able to win a championship. I mean, Giants football is 4-3 defense. And James Bettcher sucks every single week. And again, we're not going to see anything from Pat Shurmur. And Shurmur had last year to kind of get his feet under him, but then he played against the Cardinals, lost that game, and was down the entire game, trailing the game. The Giants are never in a position where they have a lead. They're always losing the game. They're up front. They haven't been able to block anybody. And again, you have Will Hernandez, who's a coveted second-round pick. And this isn't just by Dave Gettleman, okay? This isn't just by Gettleman. Will Hernandez, by every scout out of UTEP, was a fringe first-rounder, second-round pick. You can't tell me that Nate Solder, Will Hernandez, Jalapeno, and Zeitler, especially Zeitler, Hernandez, and Nate Solder, these are all established kind of talents, especially Zeitler and Nate Solder. This offensive line, Hal Hunter, they're just not progressing. It all has to do with scheme. I'm telling you, Kyle Shanahan creates running schemes for guys like Weston Richburg. Weston Richburg is up there in San Francisco right now, and he's the catalyst. He's the catalyst to a really good offensive line. Lincoln Tomlinson is a retread offensive lineman from the Detroit Lions. And he comes up to San Francisco, and they're able to put Tevin Coleman on the field, who doesn't have the same talent as Saquon Barkley. They're able to get Matt Breida. Jerick McKinnon's even hurt, and they're able to run all over teams. You have Matt LaFleur making Aaron Jones look sensational, Kevin Stefanski. I know Dalvin Cook's good, but come on, that Vikings offensive line has been terrible. What, they get Garrett Bradbury, and suddenly that Vikings offensive line is absolutely awesome? You can't use the talent as the excuse when you're down 14-0 to the Cardinals. You're down to the freaking Jets at home. This team has no killer instinct. You get a gift from Dak Prescott, and you can't turn it into a touchdown against the Cowboys. You're there 23-18 late in that game. You can't get red zone touchdowns at all. These are all games that are winnable. You saw the Cowboys lose to the Jets, lose to a Minnesota team that is like a 10-6 wild card team. And against Minnesota, you weren't even freaking close. You made Kirk Cousins look freaking ridiculously good. I mean, you weren't even close. And this defense is not maturing at all. And I believe that Gettleman has selected players that at least have talent. I mean, how come we see Peppers do well elsewhere? How come we see Nate Solder perform well elsewhere? How come Alec Ogletree is suitable for the Rams? How come Kevin Zeitler? How come Golden Tate? Nate Solder, Buffea. These are veterans. Janoris Jenkins. Janoris Jenkins looked really good shutting down Dez Bryant. And I get that some of these guys are older. You can nitpick all of them. But how come none of them can freaking perform? I think it has to do with a horrible coach, because when you have a terrible coach, he sinks the whole team. So I'm not in favor of getting rid of Dave Gettleman. He had no cap space to really work with. What's his name? Jerry Reese kind of left him with absolutely nothing in terms of like the amount of money to spend. You know, the Olivier Vernon contract got under the Giants. Janoris Jenkins' contract is not that good. The offensive line, you know, you had Eric Flowers as a tackle, Justin Pugh, Richburg, and really John Jerry, all of these misses. So you needed to invest 5 deep into the to the Giants. Darian Thompson, he's playing for the Cowboys now, but he wasn't a hit at all in the secondary. So New York Giants needed corners, they needed safeties, and the Giants went out there in the draft and got it, but they're not developing. And here's the thing about a rebuilding team, which the Giants are right now. It doesn't make sense to me during this bye week or even during the season that John Mara is going to believe that Pat Shurmur, if he can't get his team motivated enough to not suck in the first quarter of every single game, they're always in a huge hole. They never can dig out of it. And don't say that he played the Patriots close. I mean, you could use talent as one thing, but even the Dolphins can go out there and almost beat a Buffalo team. The Giants played Buffalo and got laughed out of they got laughed out of their own stadium when they played Buffalo. It was a train wreck. The Cowboys week 1 train wreck. Absolutely awful. And the Giants, they can't even beat teams that are on their level, which is the Cardinals that are a really crappy road team, the Detroit Lions and the Jets. And when I'm telling you, those teams had control of the game firmly. The Giants never had a lead, I don't think, against Detroit. They never had a lead against the Arizona Cardinals, and I don't think they led against the Jets. So I think that out of 180 minutes versus the bottom feeders of the league, which is teams with 3 wins, the Giants led for, I believe, out of 180 minutes, they might have led 2 minutes of a football game. And those teams were heads up the same amount of talent. And Pat Shurmur is not even close. And it's not like this guy has room to grow. It's not even like he's Zach Taylor, right? Like it's his first year. He's a 38-year-old guy. He's figuring it out. The roster is absolutely horrible in Cincinnati, and it's Zach Taylor's kind of first year. It's his first year doing this. Pat Shurmur was a shitty head coach with the Browns, and he has been nothing but shitty this year. And, you looked at the Bills game, the Bucks, they came back miraculously. The Washington game happened. But then, Vikings and Patriots was disappointing. It really started to turn after Arizona. And then I believe after Arizona was Detroit, which was, again, really painful. And then the Cowboys. And you're not seeing this team play with a lot of heart. You're not seeing Shurmur really communicate with this team. And Shurmur's been a head coach that's been around a long time. And his red zone offenses are not dynamic. They're not hitting big plays down the field. And their offensive line is not working. There's no real creativity or window dressing in the running game. And do you want to build your long-term future around Pat Shurmur? In what world Shurmur has been a head coach for 4 straight years? And then people say he was good with the Eagles. He was barely on that Chip Kelly staff, okay? He was barely on that staff. He was the interim coach when everything was let go with Chip Kelly, and that was a disastrous regime. And then he went up to Minnesota with Case Keenum, and it's all underneath stuff. And they have Phelan and Diggs, and they got the first round bye because their defense, Xavier Rhodes was in his prime, Harrison Smith in his prime, Everson Griffin completely unstoppable, Linval Joseph and Daniil Hunter. Like, that defensive line won them those games, and Pat Shurmur had to completely manage it. So if you put the Minnesota Vikings and Mike Zimmer in Giants gear, maybe Shurmur can go win 10 games. But he can't develop a defense. He has no defensive ideology. He doesn't care about that side of the ball. And as a head coach, you are the CEO. A lot of head coaches like John Harbaugh completely give up their play calling so that they can focus on the team as a whole. Mike Tomlin is a CEO. Anthony Lynn did a really good job last year of being the guy that oversees the entire operation. John Gruden, when John Gruden was a head coach, he went out and said, I want Paul Gunfer. When Frank Reich was the head coach, he said, I love Matt Eberflus. Chris Ballard and Frank Reich were like, Matt Eberflus, this style, this is what we want. And it was concise. And if I were to criticize Gettleman, he needs to analyze what needs to be the style. And the style needs to be a 4-3 defense where the strength is the defensive line. You have to have Dexter and Leonard on the field at the same time. And I think Tomlinson has proven to be one of your best players. Then you can have Marcus Golden or Lorenzo Carter on the edge. And then next year, can you imagine if Chase Young or Derek Brown gets added to this mix? Or maybe the guy from Iowa. Could you imagine if the Giants get Chase Young? Now, what it's going to take for the Giants to end up getting Chase Young, it's going to take the Redskins beating the Jets, and then the Redskins with Haskins are going to have to beat the Giants later in the season. And the Giants are going to have to lose to the Dolphins at home. So some of those things might be possible, because if they get Chase Young, then you have Chase Young, Leonard Williams. I'm telling you guys, I think this team has talent on it. I really do. I think the offensive line, you're going to draft the right tackle. The guy from Kentucky is already on the roster. CJ Conrad is going to come in at eventually some point. You have Sam Beal. You have Ballantyne. These young kids are going to get thrusted into this mode, and it's just in terms of who can groom them. Because I believe the Giants, with this defensive line, with Connolly coming back, and again, you're going to get more linebacker depth. You'll have some money to spend in free agency. I just think the Giants are a lot closer than people think. And even in these games, you have Daniel Jones, who's not making much money, and he's out there. He's thrown a couple 4-touchdown games, and he's going to figure it out. And his offensive line has done him no favors. For goodness sakes, he had 13 running yards against the New York Jets. The fumbling thing, of course, it's absolutely an issue. But, quarterbacks, when they get hit, Jared Goff had a fumble. Kyle Allen had fumbling issues. Baker Mayfield, of course. Jimmy G had a bad fumble for a touchdown. When you're playing the best edge rushers that the NFL has seen, because I believe the NFL is prioritizing these edge rushers like Von Miller, Khalil Mack, Nick Bosa, Melvin Ingram, Chandler Jones. Edge rushers now in a passing league are going to be just as good as they've ever been before, and Chase Young is more evidence of that, and Derek Brown, that it's going to be even harder sometimes to hold on to the football when you're dropping back like 40 times. So Daniel Jones is big enough hands. He's tough too. He's a guy that, he has a kind of a long release, but Daniel Jones is a guy that even ran for first downs. He is tough in aspects. So I would not fire Gettleman at all. Gettleman is cleaning up Reese's mess. I want him to finish. I want him to have 2 more years of building his style roster. I just think that Shurmur, in Cleveland, he was bad. The Giants thought, okay, it was Cleveland. Shurmur's going to end up being better. He'll be a good offensive coordinator. He's solid and he's safe. He's safe and boring and safe. Then the Giants hired James Betcher, who was unemployed for a long time after Bruce Arians. The Giants I think that they need a Matt Rule to come in, like a CEO type, and Shane Steichen maybe. Kellen Moore, maybe a good offensive play caller, but somebody who has an idea that they want to go to a 4-3 or they have a very specific style. And as a head coach, if Kellen Moore or Shane Steichen or Joe Brady from LSU, whoever's going to come in here as a head coach better be a guy that's a player's coach, that's a leader, and that communicates with the fan base and actually could see tangible improvement, because that's what you do as a coach. You improve the team, you improve the team around you. That's your goal as a coach, is to put the team in the best position to win, and it's to develop players, it's to be there for them personally. And I will say this about Pat Shurmur. I don't think that he's that good of a motivator. The team gets down early. He's kind of content with losing. He's nowhere near, what Ben McAdoo was in terms of just being a jerk to the players. I still think that these guys like Shurmur a little bit. They still play for him a bit. I just think that there's no future with Pat Shurmur. He's already had, 4 years as a head coach. And he's not getting it done in New York. And 2-8, and not even beating these teams like Detroit, not even getting in players' faces until this week when it was decided that Pat Shurmur was finally going to get in these guys' faces. So I don't think there's upwards mobility at all. And I'm not going to miss Shurmur. But Shurmur's a lot better than Ben McAdoo. So from a personality standpoint, we are getting closer. It's just that John Mara doesn't think outside the box. And, Jed York hired Shanahan, McVay, even Matt Nagy, Frank Reich was a good hire. So sometimes you have to go the coordinator route. And sometimes these guys that aren't first-year coaches can end up being awesome, as I alluded to. With McVay and Shanahan out there. Sometimes guys that aren't first-year coaches can turn out to be can really be fantastic. And like the difference between Shurmur and John Gruden is that John Gruden bleeds, Raider black. He is completely embedded in the Raiders culture. Like he is completely a Raider guy, And even last year when things weren't going well, you knew that John was the 10-year guy. You knew that he was a Super Bowl winner. You knew that he was a guy who knows playoff football. You know that he's a guy that really knows offense, that could develop. And John Gruden showed, especially this year, the improvement needed in year 2. And what him and Mayock did with the drafting, the trading of Cooper, the trading of Khalil Mack, they made good, tough decisions together, him and Mike Mayock. And that's kind of how you build. You have to have a coach that at least has some success, a coach that has a great grip on the locker room, and a coach that you're willing to grow with. And even if the Giants, if they go really young, like they go Kellen Moore, they go Chris Richard, where Richard's been dicey in Dallas the past couple of weeks. They go Lincoln Riley, Matt Rule, Shane Steichen. The Giants will interview these guys and see that these guys are player coaches, that they're going to help develop these kids, just like John Harbaugh is always developing, Mike Tomlin. Guys that stay a while are personable, and that's what you need to be in professional sports. You need to be able to get along with these professional athletes. That's what makes the best NBA coaches like Pop and Steve Kerr. They're able to get along with their locker rooms. They demand stuff. They achieve a lot. So that's what professional sports is about. And Shurmur, this locker room is dicey. And he's not the guy that's going to develop long-term. I don't have confidence in his offensive style. I don't think it's modern. I don't think that we're creating a lot of easy plays. And I'm telling you guys, with Ingram, Shepard, Darius Slayton coming on, Golden Tate, there will be another running back that we should add in the draft in the 4th round that we can find. That can really be a backup to Saquon so that Saquon can get 23 cracks and this other running back that the Giants will draft will get 10 cracks. It's important to have 2 running backs like Austin Eckler, like Montgomery and Tariq Cohen. It's important to have 2 running backs. So there's things to improve, but I'm seeing this through with Gettleman. I really am, and I refuse to just believe it's all on the talent. I believe that the coaching is so bad that the Giants could have been winning some games and the rebuild could have began. But I'm not ready to get rid of Gettleman. He had no cap space. You got to let him take his crack at free agency, okay? And I believe Nate Solder and some of these guys, Ogletree, I believe they would be doing better with other coaching. I really do. The guy Trent Brown is a guy that the Raiders paid a lot of money for. He's a Patriot. He was a Patriots tackle, and Trent Brown has been great in pass protection. So don't just say, that Nate Solder is a Patriots guy, whatever. I mean, what? Jabril Peppers, Nate Solder, Ogletree, all these guys are freaking awful. Robert Quinn is a cast-off from the Rams, and he's playing his best football in years. So I'm really tired of this talent argument, especially when you're playing the bottom of the NFL, showing no heart. You're down every single game. You're never in control. And that's the thing with Shurmur. They never have a lead, never. And it's one thing if you're getting out-talented by Mahomes and Watson, but that's not happening.